the other side of a massive high like winning the Euros?
I'll be honest, I always sort of said I can guarantee almost every single person that comes to watch our games has felt like they didn't belong.
You see the moment where you hit the deck and you instantly know it's bad.
From Leah Williamson, this does not look good.
I just knew instantly that was my World Cup over.
Hello, lovely Leah.
Hello.
I feel like I've wanted this to happen for so long.
So
I'm
have I.
so glad we're sat here.
So have I. Life has been very, very busy, but I'm very happy to be here.
It's been so busy. So busy. You have just had a little holiday, thank God.
I have.
Had a good time?
I did. I've got everything done that I wanted to do in my off season so that when I go back into football, I love my job again. Isn't that the point of a holiday?
Yes. But I wonder, being at the level you're at in your sport, can you properly switch off mentally and physically? Or is it always in the background that you need to stay peak in fitness and you've got that on the horizon?
I'd say I give myself like a week of full no engagement with anything. If anyone even tries to talk to me about work, which is what I call it, which sounds fraudulent, but if somebody tries to talk to me about it, I'm like, no, I'm switched off. And then after about a week, naturally your body just... Also, I do the same thing all year and I keep in this high professional mode that my body can't actually take that much longer off anyway, otherwise I start to break down. So I've always had a pretty good balance, I can't lie. I've been able to switch off quite easily.
It's so important because I think, like you say, if you don't have that balance, I think you do start to maybe not massively dislike, but fall slightly out of love with the thing that you're driven to do. And I think unless you've got that period of time where you can properly switch off, you're just going through the motions. It's really important to have time out.
100%. And also the way that I play sport is led on like passion and energy. Like that's why I do it, because it gives so much back to me emotionally. So if I'm not available to it in that way, then there would be no point me playing, because it's just not me. I think you'd have half the player. So yeah, when I go back, I want to have missed it, and I want to be happy to be back instead of feeling, like you say, like I'm just going through the emotions.
I think it's so important to talk about, because I've certainly noticed, even in my arena with sort of podcasting and even how social media works now, there's no off switch to so many parts of our lives. Whereas back 10, 20 years ago, you would do something for a bit, or you would work and then have a break. Everything feels quite relentless these days.
Yeah.
Especially in media, everything's kind of... it's just constant. There's no break. And I do think that's where all of us start to reach a point of burnout, whether it's taking on that information, whether it's looking on Instagram, watching the news, whatever it might be. We're not giving ourselves that moment to pause. And then we're all reaching burnout and going, what the hell am I doing with my life? It's just so full on.
I think it's a really, really hard thing to do. And I'm glad I feel like I've grasped, I've got control of this in even the smallest way, but you have to pull yourself back to then offer yourself at your fullest to whatever situation you're in. And like you said, I think it's just 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's just a continuous cycle, because the news is available to us. We see everything. Like you said, you switch on your phone and it's all there. You can see everything all the time. And I think if you don't, I always say this, I'm like, if I don't pull back for me now, which is the hardest thing to do, to say, actually, I'm not available for a week, 2 weeks, I'm going to be useless to you in 3 anyway, so what's the point? But I think I learned that pretty young, just from maybe just the way I am as well. Like I'm not meant to be this person that just is absorbed in work all the time. I know I'm not. Doesn't mean I don't give any less to what I do when I'm there. But yeah, I have to take my time away.
I think that's so cool, because I think I'm still learning that lesson now in my 40s. I'm like, what am I doing? I know this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Someone said to me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was during the pandemic, and I can't even think who it was, but they said, nothing in nature blooms all year round. And I was
That's lovely.
Is so cool.
Yeah.
It's so true. There's no flower that's like, hey, and like blooming the whole year. And I'm like really trying to bloom in the winter. Everything has a fallow period.
Yeah.
And we're trying to go against that. And it feels like shit. It's so horrible. So it's so good that you've got that. And I guess having a very physical element to your job really makes you focus on that, because your body will tell you very quickly if it's out of sync. And I mean, the last time I actually saw you was at Westminster Abbey, thank you very much, at a really delightful carol concert that we were at the end of last year. And this was before you'd come back to play your first match. You were sort of bursting at the seams to get back out there. You'd had that time out. How were you feeling before you played that first game?
I missed it. It was the best feeling in the world to feel like I felt like a kid again, you know, like there's periods of time as a kid where you're like, oh, mum, don't make me do this, or dad, don't take me there. But when you got there, you always had a great time. And that's how I felt about football. Every time I turned up, I was like, yes, this is my job now, but also I'm just a kid, like ready to go and have a fun session, basically. But we talk about like burnout, and before I got injured, I was in that, I really like went to a low for me in terms of just not being able to find the balance, and I didn't know where I stood with the sport or myself. So then to feel again like, wow, I love this and I love my job and I can't wait to get back out there, and everything I did was centered around it. So it was a really nice feeling to want to give yourself so much to something.
Do you think you fell even more in love with football having that time out?
Yeah, I do, because as well you reminisce so much. I saw a quote the other day, and I'm not going to quote it word for word because I'm going to get it wrong, but basically like always keeping one eye on the past, just not two. And I love to go back and reminisce, because I think that's what we do things because we know how they made us feel the first time, and you're always going to chase that first time feeling. But looking back and seeing what the good times football had given me, to then be in a position to sort of re-enter it like a bit of a fresh start, I was, oh my God, so excited and so in love with the game, yeah.
I mean, there's obviously positives that come from all tough times, and I'm sure most of us can look back and see that treacherous moments have given us, a new perspective or greater learnings. But obviously, it was also utterly shit.
Yeah.
And, when you
You're
look
not
back at, I was watching back the video of the moment where you injured your ACL back in, it was April 2023.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And you see the moment where you hit the deck and you instantly know it's bad.
Yeah.
And you can almost sense an instant heartbreak. Like it was almost like I was imagining the future just sort of flashing before your eyes, and you were like, oh, I know what this means. What did that mean for you, that moment?
The first thing I thought of, and it's true, like I didn't feel pain. Like obviously I felt the sensation, let's say, but I didn't feel pain. I just knew instantly that was my World Cup over. But like on a immediate scale. And then also like I'll be honest, I always sort of said if that ever happened to me, I'm not sure I'd be able to do it. Like I'm not sure that I'd want to do that rehab, because it goes against we talk about loving the game. They're all the parts of the game that I don't love and I don't want to do, because it's the graft, and some people thrive off of it, and I have the most respect for those people, but I'm just not one of those people. I do it because I have to, not because I'm totally into it. And just literally straight away I just thought, this is going to be months of hell. And I knew, like it's hard because I got up, I tried to walk, I thought maybe not, like maybe I'm okay. And as soon as that was it. There was no point dreaming of a scenario where it wasn't what it was.
I mean, obviously the World Cup was something that was on your mind. It's a massive, massive thing as a football player to be part of. And the heights that women's football has gotten to because of your generation of footballers and what you've managed to achieve, I can't even imagine the disappointment that you felt. How on earth do you navigate that level of, like, it's the dream has gone, I'm not going to get to do that?
You know what? It's one of the most... I don't know how I did it. I don't know at what point. I had my cry in the changing room and I really cried. Like, I spoke to Serena on the phone, England manager. I spoke to my psychologist just to like check in and just say, oh, I'll speak to you tomorrow. It is what you think it is, kind of thing. And I really got it all out of my system that whole journey. I had a 3-hour journey back to London on the bus to just cry and like really let it sink in. And I never, like I say, I never for 1 second I knew what it was and I wasn't going to hold out hope for anything else. And then I don't know what happened. Immediately you're focused on, there's elements to this as well where I'm not lucky that I did my ACL, but in this generation, you come back from that. You go back 10, 15, maybe not 10 years, but, you know, like you go back a while, you didn't come back from that injury. So first of all, I'm lucky to be part of a generation where this isn't going to end my career. Now I need to make sure that it doesn't. Like, I need to do this properly. So there's like a real element of health to it. Like, I want to be able to crawl on the floor with my future kids, and, you know, like things like that, where I'm like, this is a life thing as well as a football thing. Whereas you can get injuries in football that are not, you know, you're going to be okay. You just take some time out from the game. And then the minute I had my surgery, I woke up and I was really lucky with how it went. I could walk basically, like at 24 hours later, which is, it's not usual, you know, it's not usual. So it took me by surprise. And I went in to the training ground at Arsenal because they needed to, you know, they want to have a look at it and whatever. And I thought, oh, they'll let them come in, let me have a look, and I'll go home for another couple of weeks and just have some time off because, you know, practically don't work at this point. But then that was it. Once I went in, then they could see I could walk. I was in. And I think it just gave me a focus immediately where I was like, I'm on the mend, and I need to get better. Say that during the World Cup, I started grinding my teeth. You know, like all these different things I didn't even realise were happening until it was over. The relief I felt when it was over, just of having to engage with it every day. But ultimately, I think I got through it just because I just didn't want to feel sorry for myself. It comes a point where you just like, I can't wallow anymore, you know?
But that's a choice, isn't it? That's not luck. This is just how I've turned up in the world. You have to make a choice. This is going to literally ruin everything and I'm going to drown in it, or I'm going to look at this very incremental progress and I'm not going to wallow in it. I think that is a choice, and it's not an easy one because it requires discipline, it requires real mental focus and hard work. And also you can't rush something like that. How were you with the patience element? Because none of us are patient these days.
No.
We've all got the concentration span of fleas and we're just like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? This is a massive test of patience.
I cannot tell you how boring it is. Like, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Like, every single day I'd go in and I'd look at my physio, I'd be like, surely this isn't it.
Oh,
like,
God.
surely there's
what are
something
you doing?
else.
Talk me through the minutiae of these exercises.
You know, like, you think of an athlete, you go in the gym, you're lifting weights, or like you being really powerful and you're sweating, and I'm not breaking a sweat. Like, I'm not, I can't physically move enough to cause any sort of, I don't know, like, distress to my body. The only distress is in my knee, like, because it just doesn't move how it's meant to. But you're learning to walk again. So I'm walking and somebody's saying, straighten your leg. And I'm thinking, my leg is fucking straight. Like, but it's not. And you're just listening to all the, so, you know, I'm sitting on a big exercise ball, just going down into a squat and up again for 12 times. You know, we're talking like 5 seconds down, 12 times 4. You know how long that takes? Like, when you actually think about it. And being an athlete, like, I'm always, if I want the run to be done quicker, I run faster. You know, you work harder, and it's just not possible. And I can't tell you how hard it was to be patient. And I used to scream at my physio every day, like, give me something else. Or if somebody else, there was a girl that did it a couple of weeks after me, and we'd be looking at each other's paper. I'd be like, why are we doing the same thing? Surely I should be doing something more. You know, we had a great relationship, me and Laura, but yeah, I was asking questions the whole time. I don't think I was easy to deal with.
I can almost feel it as you're saying it, and I'm not a patient person, so it's my worst nightmare to have that level of, I mean, I've had it in sort of other areas of my life, whether it be with my kids or whatever level of patience I have to cultivate. It's so hard. It's a really hard thing to do. What do you think that extremely slow and arduous process has taught you about yourself?
That was the main thing I learned about myself, was that I actually could do it. Because I'm not, you know, it sounds silly, but at one point I thought, I don't know if I'm capable of doing this. I don't know if I want to, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be motivated enough to stick to everything I need to do to, you know, it's hard. It's hard to commit to something that wholeheartedly. And I learned, I think when you're coming through as a kid, especially in football, you have to be so diligent. And, you know, I'm picking up the cones. I'm doing everything I can be to be make a mark on my team in any way, shape or form, you know. And it was the first time I felt like I had to prove myself again, but more to me this time. And I did learn that I can be patient, you know, because ultimately I did. I might have moaned about it every single second, but I did what I was meant to do. And I don't know, I saw a strength to myself that I just hadn't seen in a long time. And I think, like I say, before I did my ACL, I wasn't in the greatest place with everything. You know, life had just changed post Euros, and I wasn't. When you say about choices, I had to make so many choices where I was like, I'm going to meet this head on, or I'm going to deal with this, or I'm going to step back from this. And it was the first time I felt like a real adult. And I've said this before, like I was on my own, so I'm living at home on my own. I'm making every single choice every single day for me on my own. You know, no one's getting me up out of bed in the morning and say, you got to do this today. I kind of separated from my family a little bit just so that I didn't want to feel like I'd relied on anyone. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, which is a hard thing as an adult as well. I think my mum struggled with that a lot at the start because I did need her, but I didn't want to ask because I needed to do it for me. Otherwise, I felt like if somebody was always pulling me through it, what happens that day when somebody's not there? And then where do you go? Who's going to... What if I can't do it for myself? And I learnt that I could. So
Yeah.
it was comforting in that way.
We've all got like so much more of everything than we could ever imagine within us. Like I think we constantly doubt ourselves, but actually when it comes to the crunch, we can go there and we can do it. And I think it's so interesting. Like I'm so fascinated with burnout because I've been there so many times, and it's a subject that I just find fascinating that again and again, so many of us don't take the signals from our body or our minds or the actions or the circumstances around us. We stop listening and we're not in tune with our intuition around things.
Yeah.
Do you think, as awful as it was having that time out and that injury, was it a bit of a wake-up call for you to listen more to what you know is right for you in sport and in your life?
100%. I, as the health of a human being, like holistically, not just as an athlete, I appreciate that. I appreciate what your body goes through. I've seen the strength of it as well. So I'm like, if I need it, it will do its job. Like as long as I choose to use it. But I don't think I'll ever let myself get to, and I make decisions now every day where I would have potentially made a different one before. And I think the balance it's given me, like, you can do this, but it needs to be in moderation, or just anything really, but just having a real appreciation for my body. And like, ultimately, we're not going to get to the next bit. Your brain's 5 steps ahead, but you won't get there if your body can't take you. So I think that, that's what I learned most about it, to really respect your body and give it what it needs, because it does talk to you and we just ignore it. We just constantly ignore it. You get headaches and you think, oh, I'm a bit tired, or anything where I'm like, no, that's because you need to go to sleep, and actually doing it is a different thing.
Yeah, and the body starts shouting about it if you start ignoring it, and that's when you're really in trouble. It's a horrible thing.
And then mentally and emotionally, you start acting in a way that is not you. It's foreign to you. So I think the version of myself now, I love her so much more than I did before, just because she looks after herself. So then it all sort of comes back to you, pays back to you in a way.
It's looking after yourself is such a simple thing, but it's so hard. Yeah. We can be so good at looking after everybody else, making sure we put everyone first. But actually, if we're not looking after ourselves, everything goes to shit. Yeah. It's so important. As you touched on, you had such a roller coaster before your injury. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the highs of the Euros. We had Serena Vigman on the podcast not long ago, and it was so phenomenal to pick her brains around that time. You know, she had obviously a whole ton of stuff going on personally and professionally around that time, but the high that you brought not only yourselves, but the whole country was just... I can't even talk about it without getting goosebumps. It was just the most phenomenal moment in sporting history. As the captain, how can you even summarise what that feeling was like for you?
It's funny because I watch the documentary it's been 2 years now, and I watch it to relive it because I want to remember how it felt. But to do something I think sometimes, things happen in the world and life where you know that something big's happening, but you only realise afterwards. It's the first time, and I'm so happy that I think we all felt like this as well, that I knew what was happening as it was happening. So, okay, the magnitude of it, we weren't ever going to know that until beyond the tournament. But in that moment, the night before, I knew exactly what was going on and how much was changing. And I think then winning it for us, that's why I kind of referenced it at the time, like actually winning was for us, because everybody had the time of their lives anyway. And obviously it would mean so much to so many people. But as an athlete, I thought the only thing that's missing literally is to win. But to be involved in this generation, to be part of that, I wouldn't swap it for the world.
Oh, it was just magic.
Yeah.
And what it did for women's football, I don't think any of us can articulate or even properly understand, but the shift was ginormous in terms of how everybody started taking it more seriously, but it should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
But also the opportunities it's giving for young girls to get into football. There still seems to be a big gap, and that needs to be narrowed in terms of the access that boys have to the sport versus girls. I can see even in my kids' school, it's still boys do football, girls do netball, and there's kind of no discussion around it.
Yeah.
Do you see that changing?
I do, yeah, I do. I think it's a generational thing. I think the generation of today and the parents of the children in school today, I think, are on board with, and wouldn't bat an eyelid if the girls were playing football and you get your list from school at the start of the year and the girls have got to have football boots. Like that shouldn't be a shock. I think it's those old school views and those typical, and it's women. It's not it's not just like women in sport. It's women in general. And I think that's the bit that we still, until those views change, and you see what's going on in the world. Like there's crazy opinions to me because that's not the way I see it. But I do see it changing, yeah. And I think the influx, like the thing that we were concerned with was how sustainable is it going to be? So obviously everything went like boom in women's football. How sustainable was it going to be? Was the interest still going to be there? And I think now we're seeing that it is, and that is the truth. So then as long as it stays there, then I think there's no limit to participation and, making it equal across the country.
I mean, it must feel like an added pressure in a sense, because you guys know that when you win a big tournament like that, there is more visibility, so things will change. It adds almost another layer that the men's football team don't have to consider. They don't have to do. It's not like life or death of the sport for them if they win or lose. Whereas for the women's team, for you to, as you say, keep that momentum going, you need to be top of your game. That feels like a responsibility that's just imbalanced.
Oh, 100%. The social sort of element to our game and the responsibility that we have to our game is crazy. And we go into a tournament, we set our goals, and we'll include like the legacy piece and what do we want, what impact do we want to have on the next generation. The boys wouldn't need to do that in terms of, like you say, the survival of their sport. But yeah, I don't know. I find it. I think it's great because it makes us and women's sport so like pure and authentic, and I think that's why people connect to us a lot more, because ultimately we are fighting for them as well, which is a choice. Like the team still has to decide that that's what they're going to do. But yeah, winning, we knew the impact that it was going to have. So then that's why we put in what do we want to do with it, for example.
I mean, it is extraordinary. When we were talking to Serena, I was still struck by, I guess, the disparity in the perception of the game and looking at the men's team and the women's team as two separate entities. For example, there would absolutely be some sort of uproar if Serena was ever to manage the men's team, but the reverse of that would be totally unquestioned.
Yeah.
And it's those sort of nuanced perception pieces that I think we're still not looking at properly. Like, she could absolutely, not that we want her to, but she could absolutely manage any men's football team at the highest level. But that sort of the perception around it is still drastically warped.
Yeah, 100%. There's everyone always talks about, like, I don't ever want, I've said this before, like, I don't want people to be surprised, and I don't want girls to be surprised when I say I'm a footballer, but there is still an element of surprise because typically it's not a female role. And especially then the hierarchy of that, like you say, with a female manager, the dynamics of it. But then that's why I say I think it bleeds so much into society. Why is there a question over a female? And it's the same in the workplace. You know, my mum's had it at work. It's to have a female managing men. Why is that so crazy? But it is still, because it's just the way we've been told the world should be for so long, and conditioned to believe so because of the people in power and the way they've stayed in power. And I think the football is the best example of it, because everybody watches it. And but even going to a stadium, if you're a woman and you go on your own to watch an Arsenal game, people, you know, that would be a shocking thing to men. Why? Like that, you know, my uncle can go to a game on his own, no stress. But if my mum goes, the amount of people that would talk to her or question it, or just like, are you okay? Like she's looking for directions or something, you know, like what's the difference?
Mad.
Yeah.
And also that's something that's been heavily noted, especially over the Euros, was that the atmosphere in the stadiums was so drastically different to a men's game. And I'm still wary of my husband taking my kids to a men's football game because I know that they're going to be dropping the C-bomb and there's just going to be a whole lot of swearing, and they've had a few swears around the house, but it's like on a level that is kind of a bit too intense.
Yeah.
Whereas so many of my friends took their kids or still do take them to women's football games or went to the Euros and had such an amazing experience of it being really unifying and everybody being there for one reason, to just totally enjoy the game. That is, I mean, a beautiful positive that women's football has brought to the forefront.
Without a doubt. I think the feel in the stadium, like you say, is safe.
Yeah.
It's a safe environment. And maybe that comes from, to be totally honest, the fact that some of the people, or most of the people that are coming, feel like they don't have a place somewhere else. So they have this experience of being an outsider, or, you know, sticking out like a sore thumb in a different environment, to come into our environment and feel like they own it and feel like they have a place to belong. I would be very disappointed. Like, it would really upset me if I heard that our game had become exclusive in a way to anyone wanting to come and watch, because the people that come and watch know how. I can guarantee almost every single person that comes to watch our games has felt like they didn't belong in a different place, which I think is where the safe environment comes from.
What a beautiful thing.
Oh, it's lovely. And it's
amazing.
I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of it. It is a welcoming place. Anybody can come to watch us, to get involved with the journey, so to speak, you know.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if the culture's the same, and I'd love to see a bit more like, I don't want C-bombs, but I want passion, and I want like real energy towards the result. Or I think we'll see that develop, as right now I think you have a lot of women's football fans, less so than I support this team, but I think that's what gives it the family feel. And I would never, if anybody ever asked me about coming to a women's game, I would never discourage them, because I would have full faith that they'd have a nice time.
Without a doubt. I mean, let's talk about the other side of a massive high, like winning the Euros.
Yeah.
We know historically, whether it's someone coming off stage after a big tour, doing something in theatre, winning a big prize, being at the Olympics, which we're all enjoying at the moment, there has to be the other side of the coin to that extreme euphoria. It's otherworldly. It's not a common feeling that many people will experience to that degree.
Yeah.
Was there a big slump at the other end? How do you deal with that after that big high? What's on the other side of it?
I was lucky enough to go to the Olympics in 2021, and I'd heard about this like massive sort of fall off when you get home, and they call it something, I can't remember, but we'd prepared for it then, and I didn't do it properly. And when I came back from the Olympics, I could only spend time with people that had been there, or, you know, like I was really, really struggling to reintegrate myself back into society. So when this one came round, I was like, I need to put things in place to be ready for the end of this, regardless of how it goes. But I think the thing for me was, as soon as that moment happened, it's a really scary realization to know that you're probably never going to feel like that again. And in my head, I go straight to, well, I've got to play again. In 2.5 weeks, I go back to football. Like, I have to start all over again as if it never happened. And I struggled massively with that, just in terms of motivation. And like, if you think that moment came off the back of 25 years of work, if you really think about it and you want to appreciate the journey, everything I'd done in my whole life had led to that. And then I thought, well, no, I've just got to start again. Or, you know, how do you sort of maneuver through that? Which was scary to me. And a lot of the girls shared that sentiment as well, because we all spoke about it, like, what is ever going to feel the same as that moment? And we're 20s. So it's a scary thought, and I struggled with that a lot, because then nothing quite hit. Anything I didn't hit how it was meant to hit, because I'd had this massive euphoric moment where, yeah, it just sort of blew everything else out the water.
Have you made peace with that now? Because it's not something you can change. Like, it's a beautiful, amazing thing that happened, but you might not get that feeling again.
Yeah.
You might. I mean, even if you were to win the Euros again next year, it might not feel as sweet as the first time you've done it.
Yeah.
So there's no guarantee with any of it. And I guess that for all of us is life, in whatever capacity. Once we've had a great moment, or even just general happiness, and we're scared when it goes, what now? You know, can you make peace with the fact that that might have been professionally, because I'm sure there's many milestones elsewhere, but professionally, that might have been the greatest moment you'll experience?
If it is, then the way I look at it now is, I'm so lucky to have had that, and anything else will be a bonus. Like, I think I've had the moment that I'll speak about when I'm 142 lying on my deathbed. You know, like, I think that would be the one that I talk about, because it was the first. It was Wembley, it was home, it was everything. I'm okay with it, because when I look back now, I just think of how amazing it was, and then I think how lucky I was to have been there. Because also, missing out on the World Cup, I then realised to even be healthy and fit enough to attend the Euros and to be in that squad was the biggest blessing of it all, just to even be there. You know, then you put on top of everything else, the moments and the lifting the trophy and all these different things, but to actually just be there is something I shouldn't take for granted. So I think that's why I'm okay with it now.
How do you integrate back into the mundane? Because all through a tournament like that, you've got the sort of exhilaration of playing.
Yeah.
You've got the adoration, you've got the cheering fans, that roaring noise that I can't even imagine how loud and incredible that is in a final. You've got, like you say, the moment where you're holding up the cup and just that pure euphoria. How do you deal with, like, I've got to go to the supermarket, I've got to, like, call my nan, like, all the stuff that is just everyday stuff? Did that feel like you're plodding through it? What was that like?
I think I'm really lucky. So I have a very unique circumstance, I think, especially in women's football. If you look at all of my teammates, and I mean all of them at Arsenal, everyone's left home. Well, bar one, Lotta. Everyone else left home at 16, maybe even earlier, to go and chase this dream, live away from their family. Their version of normal life is football, whereas my version of, like, football is an extension. It's like an add-on to my life, because I live at home. I live 45 minutes away from all of my family. I've got all my friends since I was 5, 12. You know, like, all the stages of my life, everything is still stuck together. And I know how lucky I am to have that. So to reintegrate into normal life was, I think, easier for me, which, again, when you know you have it easier than the person next to you, it makes you Like you're not going to complain. You're just going to get on with it. However, my normal life had then changed. So when I walked into the supermarket, I was somebody different in their eyes. In everybody else's eyes, I was a different person, which annoyed me because I struggled with the interactions I was having with people because I just wanted to live my normal life. I actually was so excited to... The first thing I did when I got home was I went on a pub crawl through my town I just texted like my family and said, I'm starting here and I'm ending here. Hopefully, if you want to come.
Who knows?
Yeah, if I make it that far. And I wanted to do normal things. I wanted to walk down to the shop. I wanted, driving home, text my mum, do you need anything from the shops, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Go and get fish and chips on a Friday night. All the things that you can do post-tournament because you've got this like grace period. But yeah, everyone looked at me differently and I hated it, which made living my normal life a lot more difficult, I think.
I mean, that is a side of it that you can't control, is the fame element, how other people perceive you. Did you feel a shift in how people that you've known for a long time were treating you? Old school friends, family? Because that can be even more disconcerting.
Yeah, that's the one that then makes you feel... Everybody else, ultimately I don't care. If I don't know you, I would, obviously I love feedback. I love it when people tell you what they think of you in a way, but ultimately I can take that opinion and leave it if I don't want it. When it comes to family, I think I'm blessed, like my immediate family, but the extension of that, you don't really notice it's subtle changes, but do you mind if can I have, like all those conversations start to come in, or hello, how are you? I'm thinking, well, we're not really like that. We're just the type of friends that when we see each other, we have a great time. But now you're texting me, all of these little things. It just changes, and I understand from everybody's perspective. But yeah, the way, also the grace. I don't like the or leeway that you get from people once you're successful. I was speaking to my family about this. So if I did something wrong, the likelihood of them holding me to account or is gone, like the likelihood of that is so low because actually I offer something, maybe it's a ticket to a game or, just little things. And
or
I'm
even
like,
just knowing you, people having that connection. I think it can be that simple, and it is really...
That's difficult.
Confusing.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel like you've changed inside, and that's
Yeah.
the frustration, is that you're just you.
Yeah, and the circumstances didn't change. It's not like we won the lottery and our whole lives changed. Like I say, we had 2.5 weeks before we just went back and started again.
Yeah.
In exactly the same circumstances that we were before. So I really haven't changed, and nothing about my life has changed, but felt like the walls were coming in a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, on top of the fact that you've got to focus on your actual job and deal with that. I mean, your first game back with Arsenal after the summer will be September. Are you feeling physically, mentally in great shape?
Oh, I can't wait. I did a run the other day because obviously, like, I'm in my off season and started training again, and I had the worst stitch ever ever. And I thought, this is fantastic. Like, I've not let my body rest to a point of... I didn't get an off season last year. I was rehabbing the whole time. So I've let myself get to a point of being like slightly unfit, hopefully for only like a couple of weeks. But I can't wait to sort of just be involved. Like, I haven't started a season healthy and fresh for God knows how long, 3-4 years. So I can't wait. And the fact that now we're playing at the Emirates every game, it's an occasion every time we play football now, and I love that. It gives me, it excites me. Yeah.
And like you say, you're not going to take any of that for granted or be complacent, because you know what the other option can be with injury and time out. So what a beautiful place to be in. On Women's Health magazine, you talked about endometriosis, and I think this, again, and talking about the menstrual cycle, is such an important conversation within the sporting context. We had Molly McCann on not long ago. She talked all about this leading up to a fight day, and how your worst nightmare is being on your period. I can only
imagine, especially
on that day.
Yeah.
I mean, I dread it. Even if I just got to sit down and have a chat with someone like this, I think, I don't want to be on my period. I'm going to feel all headachy and bloated and just a bit paranoid and like more aware of my body. It's just such a pain for all of us that we
Yeah.
have to do this every single month. But having endometriosis is a whole other kettle of fish. So for anyone that doesn't know much about that, what might that mean for you during your menstrual cycle?
The main change that I like, pain, basically. Like every symptom that you'd normally get on your period is maybe a bit more heightened. That's the less of it. But anything like your blood flow, your like your energy levels, I really struggle with like lightheadedness and just feeling like I'm just gonna pass out, like maybe from pain or cramps or whatever it is. But I think they're the main, like the day to day that sometimes you bat away. So before I knew I had endometriosis, I'm just like, oh, that was a bad period, like when I look back at the week. Whereas now I know, I prepare for it, but I also am obviously super tuned into like, no, that's not an acceptable level of pain. Like you need to help yourself there a little bit, because I grew up, my mum's great. She's like, you go and play sport, it'll make you feel better, because it's the least thing you want to do. And you get to a point you're like, no, I can't really run this off. And now I will have days on my first day of my period where I can't move. Like ultimately I'm sort of like slightly, I only realise when I go to bed and I've been sort of bent over the whole day.
So what do you do if you've got a game?
So if I know, so during the Euros especially, I had a big chat with our doctor, and I was taking tablets before, so like 3-4 days before, to like prepare my body so that I had like a lining of painkillers basically to deal with whatever came in, and then sort of just essentially ride it out, but with the best way possible of, do I drink a bit more of this or anti-inflammatory stuff, smoothies, etc., and just try and prepare. But ultimately, like, there are days when it's just shit. Like it comes on the day and you think, right, what do I do now, kind of thing. But it's not nice, you're playing in white shorts, or
it's the worst.
It's just
the colour white can fuck right off when you're on your period. I don't want to
You're
be
not
anywhere
wrong.
near it.
You're not
It's
wrong.
just, I just want black. I want to dress in black
Exactly.
and hide from the world. And I think whenever I've talked about the menstrual cycle in the context of sport, it really makes me feel alert to the fact that in every way in society, we do not honour the menstrual cycle at all.
No.
And it's half the population going through it for a large chunk of their lives.
Yeah.
And we just pretend it's not happening.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it. We don't have any leeway for it. It's just not a consideration. And I do think it is that cliche thing of, if women had much more power in the world, or there was that equality between men and women's power in the world, this would be like we would be seriously looking at this.
You'd
and
have
going,
one pill that you could take that would just
Yes.
like take away every symptom or something.
there would be something
Yeah.
going on. But
Yeah.
it's just like, crack on. And also in silence. And I think I really realised that. I was on a photo shoot a few months ago, and I came my period, and it was just not great. And
Yeah.
I was like in these skimpy outfits, and I was like, this is a nightmare. And I was in the toilet, and I almost went into a place of shame. Like, I can't tell anyone, this is so mortifying. And I was like, I refuse to be embarrassed to talk about this out loud.
Yeah.
And I marched in and said to it was a male stylist, but I just said, look, mate, I've come my period. You need to help me out here. I thought, I'm not going to be silenced and like forced into not talking about it. So I think it's amazing that you're using your platform to talk about this.
100%.
It's so important.
It's 100%. There's two things that always make me laugh. In football, you do that thing, like if we went out to a bar and I went to the toilet, I come back and say, oh, have you got a tampon? I need a tampon, whatever. We've all been there with a
Why
mate.
they're not in toilets, PS, but that's a whole other fucking thing, yeah.
And then when you give it to me, I slip it up my sleeve.
Yes.
And I walk through the bar and I go to the toilet, all secret, like,
Yes.
even though I've just come and gone back, so it's very obvious anyway.
See, without she's doing drugs, so let's hope it's a tampon.
Let's hope it's a tampon. In football, it's getting launched across the room. Doesn't matter if it's men, women, like, I'm like, anyone got a tampon? Everyone's, because there's no shit, because you can't be shameful in that setting. But then there's another thing that always makes me laugh. If you said to a man, you can use it as an excuse, because they're so awkward about it as well. Because, because we make it awkward, we're shameful. So if I really need, at school, if I said to one of my teachers, so I've just come on my period, he's like, go to the toilet. Oh, like, do whatever you need. Like, don't tell me about it. Yeah, just don't talk to me about it. Go home if you want. Like they would rather.
I know.
Because it's just such a taboo.
It's such a. But why?
Well, it happens.
Why?
And
Like
it's
the up the sleeve thing. I
It's what
can't tell you how many
happens.
times I've done
Yeah.
it. And I sort of put my hand in my handbag so suspiciously, slot it up there,
Oh, yeah.
pin my arm to my body, and sort of shuffle to the. What are we
you
doing?
can spot it a mile off.
Next time, I'm going to think of you. That's a nice thought when I'm on my period. And I'm going to get a tampon. I'm going to walk across the room with it aloft
Yeah.
and just go, "Hey guys."
Yeah, I'm just going to the toilet. I just need to put my tampon in.
What a joke. What a joke. But I just love that you're bringing that into the conversation for young girls who are getting into sport. You know, when I'm watching the Olympics at the moment, I'm like, how are these gymnasts doing it?
It's incredible.
How
When
are
I
the
watch
swimmers, how are they doing it?
Yeah, the anxiety that it gives me watching for them is...
And it's not mentioned. It's like, oh, and in lane 4, blah, blah's on her period. We should be talking about this shit. They might have an unfair disadvantage because they're on the period right now as they're swimming in lane 4, by the way. It's wild. I also want to talk about your books because this has become a real big thing for you. And I know that during your time out when you were injured, you learned to play the piano, PS.
I did, yeah.
Amazing thing to have done. Like, that's one of those pipe dreams where you go, I'm going to learn Spanish next year, and it never happens. You learn to play the piano.
Yeah.
So playing the piano and writing seem to be two really nice side outlets for you. What are you getting from both of those things?
Playing the piano came from a place of boredom. Like, I was so in this... Well, did I mention that ACL recovery is really boring? I got to a point where I was literally tearing my hair out. I was like, I need to do something. Like, I've got too much energy and I need to use it. And that came from, like, for me. Like you say, you think, what can I add to myself in this time? I've been gifted time, essentially. What can I do? So I thought, I've always wanted to play a musical instrument. It's something I can do that doesn't affect my performance. Like, I'm just sat at home. You know, it's not like I'm active. So that was for me. This and writing the books, I see it as, you know, if I was a kid, there wasn't books like that for me to read. Like, specifically about, it's not about football. It's, you know, it's a children's book that's just fun, adventure, and a little bit of mystery and problem solving. But ultimately, putting a female footballer on the front cover of a children's book, I think is powerful for the next generation. So I see it as an extension of my role as a footballer, but also I write it with my cousin, and the opportunities, there's things that have come along, you know, that really have changed like our life as a family, and this is one of them. And for her to, I remember having the initial conversation, I said, I'll only do it if my cousin writes it.
So
and, you know, it's a bit one of them, like, I'm bringing me mate, and everyone's like, oh God. And she turned out to be really, really good.
It's so nice. I mean, beautiful for your relationship as cousins, but also for young girls to pick up this book, and young boys. We should all be reading fiction
it's just normal. It should just be, it's on the shelf, and then they don't see any difference. It's only us that tell them that that's abnormal.
I love it. I love it. It was your third book?
This is the third, yeah.
Book. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
So
it's
good.
really cool.
It's so good. Well, look, I wish you all the best with the books and all the best for September.
Thank you.
And the Euros next summer.
Thanks.
And it's just been a joy talking to you. Thank you so much, Leah.
Thanks for having me.